We, with our creative model over the last 3 years, have proven actually good ideas can come from anywhere, including someone who's worked here for 7 days. I hate the human behavior that makes someone feel inferior in all shapes in life. And we definitely need to get that out of every creative meeting we're in. Nothing kills creativity more than a bag creative lead or a bag client that makes everyone feel like shit because they put out their subjective thing and then somebody in there thinks that their subjective thing is more better because of some bullshit award. It's all not real. And please don't use not real to not be nice.
Welcome everybody to the Super Bowl after party. Hey, Jim.
Hi, Andrea. So good to be here. That's a great reel. Thanks for putting that together. Incredible.
Yeah, no, it's a great little snippet of, we're going to be having conversations with 7 CMOs that had ads in the Super Bowl. We're really excited to have some rapid fire discussions with them. And we've got, Gary's in the house.
Hi, everyone.
Hey, Gary.
Great to see you, Jim.
Great to be here, buddy.
Hi, everybody. Thank you for jumping in. I know everyone's busy given the incredible crew we have here. So thank you for allocating your time and attention to this combo.
Gary, this is the 4th year in a row we've done this together. It's such a pleasure to do this with you. I love it. I look forward to it. We have to do it in person one of these years. We really do.
Well, I think we started in
We did. The first one
in person, but
Yep.
I don't know
Then
if you heard
COVID.
about this. There was a global pandemic. I don't know if you're aware, Jim. That kind of threw us off. But to your point, I think we're kind of back. So I think we should make a commitment right here, right off the bat, that this will be in person. And so that means everyone on this call, please make sure you're in New York the first week after the Super Bowl. I mean,
we've got a year to plan.
You know, that's the tough part, right? Like there are real wins and losses. Like there's so many great things that came out of COVID. So many of our friends on here right now are just, if we make this Tuesday, February 16th next year in New York, are just not going to be part of this discussion and won't be there. And so I think we've got to find our balance, but nonetheless, it's great to be here. I'm excited to talk about it.
So, Gary, I got up early on Super Bowl Sunday and I turned on my TV and I saw you being interviewed in Glendale early in the morning with a nice turtleneck on, talking about your parents, which was beautiful. But I want you to tell us about the weekend a bit. What inspired you? What did you do? What was really remarkable for you?
I can definitely tell you that one of the worst strategic decisions of my career was to wake up at 4 a.m. in Arizona to do that spot, knowing that TV consumption on cable is so low right now that I probably have less people watching that than are listening to this interview right now. And
you had me.
I don't know if you know this, the desert, Arizona is very cold at 5 a.m.
Yeah.
Really cold. And I only had a t-shirt and then I put the turtleneck, thank God, at the last second. But look, I had the fortune I see Ian's in here, there's some others. For me, Super Bowl, why I'm going to Utah tomorrow for All-Star A&A in Orlando, all of it, especially in post-COVID, is to get quality time with quality people. I think when I look at the faces here, a lot of people I know super well, a lot of people I don't know that great, or I used to know really well and not as much these days. Anytime you can get 15, 20, 30 minutes of a real conversation where you can not only talk about the things off the field, family, real life, you have that bond, but even if you can get 10, 15 minutes of real talk, right? Business challenges, like this is a fun combo. We get to talk about creativity, messaging, branding, and then there's just the realities of actual business that everybody here thinks about, which is like the P&L and, what is the economy structure? And so just what I would say is quality of conversation and being able to actually just spend some time and have serendipity. One thing Zoom doesn't do is allow for serendipity.
Yep.
So, the commissioners, the owners brunch, I was fortunate enough to be in there, and just the incredible level of conversations I was able to have with Fortune 500 companies and platforms and other individuals felt like 17 flights worth of business being done. I find these things to be more efficient than actually doing the trips one by one. And so I really look forward to it on a human level. Yeah.
Hey, listen, I listened to our conversation last year at this time, and I think the work this year generally was better. I'm not sure where you are on that, but in last year's podcast or recording, you were very vocal that we overused celebrities last year, and you felt it was lazy on the part of marketers. I kind of felt celebrities were used a bit differently this year. So I'd like you to, are you still feeling that way after looking at this body of work?
Well, this
or
talks,
not?
one thing I've been thinking a lot about is at scale in society. And so as the gentleman who had incredible passion that celebrities are used too much, that had his agency use Ben Stiller and Steve Martin, and then have a roast of Mr. Peanut.
We're going to talk about that.
Yeah. Look, my father has a great saying in Russian that translates to whoever signs the check gets to pick the music, right? And so, look, I continue to believe there's opportunity. You think about, Nicole's a former Vayner alum. To see what Tubi did, think back to the year before, the QR code. I continue to believe interrupting attention, breaking patterns, trying different things is the kissing cousin to using celebrities that make you feel something or think something. The Clueless recall, Ben Stiller, I thought was, and Steve Martin, and then I think there's a lot of ways to slice it. I think a lot about, I continue to be overly passionate that everybody on this call needs to stand up their own mascot. I think we need to bring it back to the 60s and 70s. I really believe that. So much more ownable. So yeah, I continue to think that there's better arbs than the celebrity fee, notwithstanding the fact that those celebrities bring an enormous amount of tension and feelings. There are many, and when I think of, for example, let's talk about Pepsi, and I know Todd's here. There's such warm feelings towards those two individuals. They lack controversy. They have an overall halo effect of trust and goodwill. The subconscious of those two did this. I may try this when I see it at Fountain today, or when I'm at 7-Eleven. That's just real psychology. That's real life. And that gets into the logic of why. And then you have, Tubi interrupting, or the Clueless play does that. Nostalgia, I think, is very underpriced. So I like when we use celebrities in a recall like that. And so I think there's a lot of ways to hack human emotion to create consideration. And I think we get to see all those displayed during Super Bowl, which is why I think we enjoy it, especially for the people here who really think that branding and marketing is the ultimate sales engine. And I would argue almost all of us on this call believe that to be true. But I think we all can also agree that when branding and marketing is done poorly, it can be one of the great wastes of money in a business. And so I think that keeps us all up at night and sharp at night. And I like that. And I like being a part of this community. And I just want to say hi to everyone.
Gary, you're a high touch leader. The book that you published last year was all about that. Your team, VaynerMedia, did 3 ads for the Super Bowl this year, 2 on Pepsi, 1 on Planters. And people are nervous when they do this work because the showcase, the stage is really big. What did you say to your team about the work before it went live?
I don't know if Rob, and I know Nick is here. I saw him in the chat. Now I see him on my screen. Is Rob here? I don't know if Rob's here, but I'll tell you what my team will tell you is I'm a funny character. There's 3 to 7 things I'm passionate about, and I'll really put a lot of energy on that. Emotional happiness and all that is why I think Vayner's doing what it's doing. But when it comes to the work, which is so powerful, for example, let's just use Rob in this example. This year, Todd, to give him some roses while he's on here, Todd is an unusual client that I would argue is similar to Nick and I, where he's an operator who probably just has naturally better talent creatively, subjectively than your average person. It just is what it is. And he has passion for it in a way that Nick, who does client for us, who's on this call, and I, who am an operator and a CEO, he has passion for it and he's good at it. And so that's a different kind of client. So for this year, for example, what was most exciting to me is I always have my special relationship with Todd. Nick, because he's an account person that blends into creative in a weird way, similar to Todd. I actually see them. I haven't said this to them, but I'll just do it right here. They have so many similarities. They operate, but they have creative skills. What was fun about this year was this was a year that I felt that Rob, our chief creative officer, is now really in year 3 of his journey with us and brings all the years of what makes Madison Avenue great, but I think now has a sensibility that makes what's been going on with Vayner happen. And I think this was a year that Rob and Todd really molded together and built their creative bond. So for me, I didn't say anything. My team knows that I continue to give them pure freedom, but would prefer for them to create very direct business results, direct calls to action, and stand up mascots. We did not do that. And that's okay. Because again, back to whoever pays for the music gets to pick the song. So I try to influence strategy, but I don't micromanage it, especially because I'm empathetic that these are big ass bets, and Rafiq and Todd and Nicole, like they need to make their and we didn't do the creative for Tubi, we're a partner in a different way, but we got to leave them freedom in this bag. I'm still trying to win the day-to-day commercials battle. Super Bowl takes everyone's intensity to another place altogether. So I try to tread lightly while inspiring, like don't compromise and completely make it vanilla. Because I think we can all agree, and this is scary, we can all agree that there are some Super Bowl commercials that ran 4 days ago that we are not going to be able to recall here.
Sure.
And we're professionals in it.
Yep.
We're professionals in this. We're having a Thursday meeting about it. Right? We're hanging.
Yep.
And there's absolutely some commercials that so were vanilla that we're going to struggle here. And that's how you fall into, don't forget, it's 7 million just to get the awareness. There's production, there's the agency fee, there's out of pocket. Like you're talking about a 12, 13, 14, 10, if you got lucky, $1 million miss. And no business wants that, let alone in this environment.
Gary, you're a big Jets fan, so I'm going to give you the privilege of welcoming into our conversation the Kansas City Chiefs CMO, Laura Krug, world champion, Kansas City Chiefs. Come on in, Laura.
Welcome to the
Oh, nice. 9 all the way through.
yeah.
I mean, did you know that Elton John's favorite rapper is Tech Nine?
I did
Love
not.
that. See?
Of course.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
But I do know that I'm extremely jealous of you since I've never been, the Jets have never been to a Super Bowl in my lifetime. And so you were going to be part of this because you're in our everyone here is part of this incredible family of like-minded individuals. But the fact that your incredible football team, who's been wildly consistent at the top tier over the last 5 years, has now found themselves a second title, must feel just outrageous, huh?
Honestly, outrageous. It's a bit surreal. I think what's the most surreal, I've been here for about it's my second season now, obviously having spent some time in Anheuser-Busch before, to see the city. I mean, literally grocery stores were shutting down before the game was played, right? Like that doesn't happen in most places, having grown up in a couple different places, right? So to see the city, to see, I think just the global fandom that has happened over the last few years, certainly being on the business side of it, there's only so much you can control, right? And so it's pure joy and happiness. And I think everyone's just a little bit on, I don't even know, cloud 9, cloud 10, cloud 11 at this point. So we're super proud. And, I think in many ways it is just the beginning for the dynasty, hopefully, but also I think for fans around the world who, may not be like you, Gary, and a huge Jets fan, like a lot of people don't have the loyalty yet to a team. So I feel like we're on our way to becoming one.
This is, to your point, this might be very fascinating for a lot of people. This is the globalization of American football is clearly on, right? The Germany execution was great. London's been going on for a while. Obviously, I'm trying to strategize my way to Jets ownership, so I have a lot of relationships. And
maybe we on this call can help you, Gary. Maybe we can do that.
I'm hoping directly or indirectly, Jim. And I think what, to your point, Laura, I think you're hot as an organization because most of my I've been watching football for 40 years. Most of my entire life, the Chiefs barely even made the playoffs. And when they did, they would have heartbreakers like they did in 93 and things of that nature. So you're getting hot at the same exact time that American football has decided it needs to be global because, proper football is the NBA's further along. Now you're doing this. To your point, I would argue the Chiefs, especially how young Patrick is, has disproportionate potential to become the biggest global team in the world. If this is a 5-year window over the next 5 years that adopts a lot of people in Asia, LATAM, and Europe, I'm sure you're thinking about that quite a bit.
100%. I mean, I'll say, I think that was pretty much one of the main reasons I was brought in. People are always shocked to hear the Chiefs didn't actually have a formal marketing team before I joined. They've never had a CMO. And it's not because they weren't doing an amazing job. They were clearly doing an amazing job, but the change has started to happen where the fandom is not only in Kansas City right now. It's actually fascinating. We're one of the most displaced teams in the NFL 32, and yet we have the highest avidity of fandom. And so to your point, Gary, I mean, with us playing in Germany next year, it's definitely our focus, trying to find the right way to connect the game, the players, our heritage, obviously with the Hunt family. How do you do that in a world where not everyone can come to the stadium, right? Even if we built 12 stadiums on top of each other, it's not going to be hundreds of millions of people that obviously many of the partners on here, right, are advertising on. So it's a huge focus of ours, and we're just trying to capitalize on it right now because it is the window. If we don't do it now, it will be past, right?
Yeah,
so you got to go now.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
Laura, from Sunday morning until today, what's been the most memorable part of this experience?
Oh, that's a hard one. I actually will say, I think post game, the win was obviously post the win though, and having our organization come together, having the players and ownership and the business staff and everyone that works really, really hard that doesn't necessarily get all the credit, right? Getting us all together to celebrate it is a pretty extraordinary thing. And then yesterday, riding on buses and watching an entire city literally shut down to celebrate a sport, right? It's remarkable. So I don't know if I could pick one, but I would say those two.
That's good. Well, listen, I want you to, we're going to bring Deb Waugh from GM into the conversation, and they just did an amazing amount of creative work in this game. And Laura, I'd like you to welcome Deb in and maybe have the first question for her.
Ooh, welcome, Deb. Very nice to meet you. Thank you, Gary and Jim, for having us all together. So I guess one question I have for you is, so I remember being on the other side, and the ad meter comes out and it's everyone's kind of focus and favorite point of attention. For you, what was the thing on Monday morning, or at least late on Sunday night, that you felt like this was going to be successful or not, and how did you judge that internally?
Thank you, Laura, and hi everyone. It's great to hear your point of view on everything, because I think it's really interesting as we all think what platforms like Super Bowl mean for the future. Since there aren't that many anymore that draw 113 million people. So my most important thing was actually Motley Fool, which came out and said that, we had done our earnings announcement on the 31st. We started showing our first spot on the February 2nd. And we had a great year, thanks to all the work of all the team members at GM. So our stock price went up, which was great. And then when we launched the Netflix partnership, investors acknowledged that this is a different way to start thinking about doing marketing investments and brand partnerships overall. So our stock went up again, and they gave us credit for another 6%, which was great. And then of course the Jim Stengel, which I call the true ad meter, because as we all know, ad meter is quite something. Anyways, I won't say anything more about that. But I mean, how many people actually rate 51 some spots and do it? So what kind of fidelity do you have on that?
Deb, we have some things in common. I once did an ad with Will Ferrell. We did it with Old Spice and Semi-Pro tie-up. And we shot about 35 ads with him, and we never gave him a script. So I'd like you to talk a little bit about Will Ferrell and your team. Was he scripted, or was that him being Will?
Will always gets some ideas, but it's Will being Will. He's amazing. And he is amazing. I think, one of the best talents I've ever worked with. And he always comes through something more, but most genuinely, if you remember, like we used Will 2 years ago when we issued the first challenge of America versus Norway.
Yeah.
And that was something he was completely honestly and authentically engaged with. So when we had this opportunity to come back and take it to the next level about, all right, how do you normalize the idea of EVs for America, and especially worldwide, definitely, but especially in the US, he was amazing on that part. And I like that I think continuity and consistency with when you use celebrity is really important. And I have just so much respect for him. He also was amazing. He came internally. He became a contract employee and, went and participated in our Yammer discussions and Yammer pages. He shot the most hilarious video showing his Hummer EV and, said thank you to all of our employees in the plant who actually build the cars. And, it just kind of brings the whole importance of something like a platform like Super Bowl, how important it is on so many levels.
I love what you do about making a statement about your strategy and your culture on the Super Bowl. And I think that's such a smart strategy internally and externally. Could you talk a bit more about that, Deb?
Yeah, I think it's right now when there's so much transformation going on, that's what makes a difference. And again, for us, this was really interesting. We didn't just do a one product shot. We were trying to showcase a different relationship with Netflix, which is the largest content producer. And by the way, they were awesome to work with. I really appreciate their team, a lot of creativity, a lot of real focus. They are the largest streamer. They truly impact culture. And I think as we all look in the future, we all know ads are how effective are ads. It's how do we use all these other channels and ways of getting our messages across. So that's why I was especially interested. Now, the other thing I would share with everyone, it's a lot of work to do like a big partnership like that. It took us a lot. This was not something we cooked up in the last, 6 months. It takes a lot of extra work to do something that appears like that. So I think that's important for everyone to know. And then we see it as a platform that can continue on because we have GM Energy, we have sustainability in common, we have all these things that apart from any ad relationships that we do with Netflix, which this does allow us to also be a first mover in that partnership, is really important. And I think that's the way as we think about marketing in the future. I really wanted to do this and the team did because I think that signifies where we should go as an industry and how we should start thinking about things differently. And even, again, we debate every year, should we really invest all this money in Super Bowl? And I'm really worried because there aren't that many platforms that gather a lot of people anymore collectively. And that's important for humans. We want that common experience, but how are we going to achieve that in a couple more years? So I think that's why it's important to experiment and really look at different ways of doing that.
Gary, anything for Deb before we let her go?
The last couple things she just chatted about really got me going on two fronts. One, to her point, and I think, it's so weird because I was the social digital guy, but I've been beating the drum of Super Bowls underpriced for a decade and agree with Deb, just very honestly, I would continue to spend as much as I could if I had one of these roles on Super Bowl, because I think actualized consumption, actualized consumed reach versus potential reach are two very different things. So I think her point is absolutely right there. And then just because how my brain works, when she talked about the importance of us having these collective moments, it makes a lot of sense given the last decade of what we've dealt with. But recency bias is something I'm thinking a lot about. And where my brain went was before television and radio, we didn't have that. And what did that actually mean? And so I got a little bit weird about thinking about the 1800s for a second. So that's where Deb took me personally, but I'm not sure if that's relevant for this. So I think we should move on. But Deb, congrats on everything. I know we get to jam a little bit here on our LinkedIn chats and things of that nature, but I continue to really root for you. And I really do appreciate some of the different things that you spearhead. And I think it's important for the industry.
Thanks, you guys. It's great to see everybody.
Deb, we're going to bring in another CMO who knows a little bit about entertainment. We have Todd Kaplan, CMO of Pepsi, who's going to join the conversation. And Deb, I'm going to let you ask the first question to Todd. GM to Pepsi, here we go.
Yeah, well, I was watching with interest as you changed your attack from, sponsoring the halftime show to really a really great presence with storytelling that was continuous. So how do you feel about that? And what's your thought about Super Bowls in the future?
Yeah, I feel great about it. At the end of the day, I think to your point, there's no other platform like it where you get over 100 million people all together talking about the same thing, going on the ups and downs and all of that. And I think the whole idea of Super Bowl is kind of what you do with those moments and how you capitalize on that as more than just eyeballs, right? And that's where all the storytelling of the before and all the PR, all the after, all the during, and the social commentary and all of that. And I think we made a strategic shift to move away from the halftime show. And again, and it was 10 years for us. And I think it was time for us to kind of turn the page and move on to what's next. And we're feeling great about that. And this year, we had a really, it was a different brief because it was very product focused. Really, we had reformulated our Pepsi Zero Sugar formula, and we really had a goal of trial. And it's an interesting brief for something like Super Bowl, trying to get someone to try your product. And especially when, as we were just talking about early on, there's this healthy, there's a really sharp insight of that is there's a healthy distrust that consumers have of advertising in general, of why the hell should I believe this person? I paid them money. They're only saying that because I paid them to say that. And that offense is done the worst on Super Bowl Sunday. So we said, what if we lean into that tension and bring, two beloved actors, Steve Martin, Ben Stiller, together to kind of play this little, is it real or is it acting game with everybody? And have them, the big punchline is they try the product, like, wow, that's really good. Or is it? I don't know. You try it yourself, And we put our money where our mouth is. And we also gave out online over up to 10 million samples of the product to make sure people actually could try it. And we were really happy with the results. Obviously, it was a big shift for us coming from, the halftime show and the amount of discussion that drives. But even with that, we still drove a ton of share and voice. Kim from my team is on here, and a number of other folks from the Vayner crew had a war room over at Twitter where we continued to drive a lot of social conversation and dialogue, and really showed that, with some spots in the game, some billboards, some clever online stuff, you could still drive, a lot of share of voice is one of the most talked about brands, as well as, we still got almost up to 30 billion earned media impressions out of it from the PR pre and during. And it's also going to be launching a new campaign we'll be talking about in another week or so with some more beats that will come also. So we're feeling great about it.
So Todd, if you look out 3 months from now, what will you say? Will this be effective if what happens? What, higher trial?
Yeah, I think for us, the proof is in the pudding with this is a critical product and category for us to grow, and literally just getting it in people's mouths. The reformulation we have, it's an advantage product. We know it's better than our competitors, and we just need to get it in people's hands. So that's going to be a big push, and just continuing to kind of drive that awareness of that we have a zero sugar product as well.
I want to talk to Todd for a moment about creativity, Gary. I've tweeted that PepsiCo may be the best company to consistently produce Super Bowl level quality work. And the work on Popcorners and Doritos this year was just terrific. So Todd, if you could put your big corporate hat on, yeah, sure. What is it about this culture that just consistently delivers this kind of creativity? It's
something where, and listen, there's the benefit of we have these big brands and this household penetration in these products, right? So the game we're playing on some is a little bit different. So look at Popcorners versus Pepsi, or even back years ago when I launched Bubbly, and it was about driving awareness. Mm-hmm. What is this new product? So the brief's going to change every year if you're trying to drive awareness, affinity, equity, all the, trial, whatever it ends up being. But I think, knowing kind of the scale and the power of, how to tap into consumers, and knowing that we don't sell direct to consumer, we need to really maintain more than just top of mind awareness. We need to really get that emotional connection and get people talking about our brands and more into the ether. And I think a lot of the models that we've kind of built at PepsiCo have fueled some really kind of creative and out of the box thinking. It's kind of funny. I was talking to someone the other day, and as we were talking about the ad meter, and we were debating how horrible the metrics are with that and all that stuff, but we were looking up some of the past that, Pepsi has 4 of the top 5 rated ad meter spots of all time. And actually there was a survey that shows we're the most associated brand of all brands with the Super Bowl. When you think of 40 years back of advertising, the halftime show, all of that. And so there's a big, also internal, I think, pride and kind of legacy of wanting to, we have a little bit of a competitive fire between us and Frito on the beverage and snack side, and wanted to continue to push forward. And the Doritos and Popcorners folks did a great job this year as well. But I think it's just, continuing to push forward and think of these brands and how you can tap into the fact that there's all these cultural truths and how you can kind of turn them and play with them in your creative process is really, how we get it done.
Gary, your team works with Pepsi. Do you want to comment on that, add to that about what's special about this culture?
Yeah, I think I put it in the chat. I'm also noticing a lot of people are not part of the chat. All the good stuff is going on in the chat, along with me and Jim trying to
As
hold.
always.
So please get in there, because I think, you know, this is going to end in 30 minutes. I think for a lot of people, if you're just consuming it and not participating, I think that renders the experience not as strong. I said in the chat, I think pop culture actually matters to PepsiCo. Now, look, they have youth products. There's some reasons why that makes sense, but I think it does. And I do think that brands that may skew a little older also can win on pop culture that is relevant to the audience they're trying to reach. And so I believe it's in the DNA in the halls. You see it consistently. And I think that the ideation starts. So I, under the hood, am very aware of the other ideas that were being debated. And I can tell you all of them were grounded in all sorts of layers of popular culture. And I think, you know, Vayner has been thinking a lot lately about why we're over indexing with our social work and our above the line work to the business result. And a lot of it sits in what Peter Chun, who's here, does on platform, and a lot sits on Wanda and Rob and strategy and creative. We're obsessed with this concept of PAC. We call it platform and culture.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think Pepsi's dominating on culture time and time again. And I think platform is, do you understand the distribution? Do you understand like did you understand the assignment? Super Bowl's got 30-second video or so, obviously sometimes 45, sometimes 60. And then obviously that plays out dramatically in other platforms. Rafiq did, you know, Mr. Peanut did the assignment there, but then also extended the assignment to Tubi and executed very different creative there that looks like actual production of a thing, not a commercial. And so I think everyone in this room, because I'm always obsessed with why did people allocate time here? So if you leave with anything, this acronym of like PAC, the platform and the current state of the culture of your consumer, if you can synthesize that to being contextually relevant to your distribution in an emerging streaming world, which is going to eat up most of television as we know it, and in social, which has all the rest of the attention, but it also plays out to activations, to billboards, to radio, to Spotify. So I think on the culture side, which we think is the one of the two pillars that dominates success, I think it's just in their DNA.
I think just to add one last thing before you move on too, I would also say is the aside from the cultural truths, it's the commitment to the craft, I would say, of how we partner with our agencies and people who get us there, whether it's our in-house people who do stuff out of Dallas and Plano, or as you were talking about how we worked with Rob and team, you know, we get under the hood into the creative craft of it all versus, you know, sit at our seat and just buy ideas from people. And so I think that's the executions, you know, the difference that sometimes makes a difference in some of this work, that sometimes you have a great idea that isn't executed the right way and all that kind of stuff. And so we really blur those lines.
Mr. Peanut, come into this conversation with Mr. Pepsi. Rafiq Lawendi, head of marketing for Planters, join our conversation. I hope you guys are friends. I mean, Peanuts and Pepsi. I mean, it's perfect.
That's it.
We need to work on that. Yes. I mean, Todd, I share a lot of what you said. I obviously spent 10 years of my career at PepsiCo, and I would say it's the pride in the brands and PepsiCo brands, and it's the care that, you know, starts from leadership at the very top to the bottom. Like, it's just appreciation for creative and appreciation for kind of just being part of culture, which a lot of times we take for granted, but they're actually not present across, you know, all companies. So fully agree with you there.
Right.
Rafiq, you have had a long-term commitment to the Super Bowl, and you know, I think it was an unexpected brand to come to the Super Bowl a few years ago. So would you speak to why this has worked for you so well? And is it a tough sell internally to be involved year in and year out?
We haven't asked that question once so far. So that's how successful it has been. I fully agree with Gary. At this point in time, this is the biggest moment for storytelling. This is the biggest moment for engagement and inviting consumers to also participate in telling your story. And so that's what we've been doing consistently, and kind of particularly since the moment we kind of killed Mr. Peanut and locked all that love and kind of moment for him in culture, we've been on a roll. And frankly, what I also love about Super Bowl is like every year, you kind of have to see where the culture is going and where your brand, you know, needs to achieve, and then find that, you know, crazy connection in between. And so, you know, one year we didn't even be part of Super Bowl officially, we actually were, because we donated our money to, little acts of extraordinary substance on, during COVID time. Last year, we played the whole game around, one nutter, or all nuts at a time, and, into mixed nuts. And it was the first time we actually moved away from Mr. Peanut and really focused on snacking. And then this year we got him back again, because it is time for peanuts. It is a recessionary time. Peanuts are an amazing snack that are very much underrated. And so honestly, Super Bowl has worked so well for us, year on year. Obviously, partnership with Vayner has been incredible as well. And every year, I think we are just continuing to raise the bar.
How do you judge success, Rafiq? Is it volume, share, conversations, discussion? What is it?
Definitely our presence in store and share. And that has been improving. I would say year one, when we kind of killed Mr. Peanut, we were kind of almost did not even plan for anything in store. This year, we kind of have, way more planned ahead. We have Walmart for the first time supporting us and giving us a lot of space in store. So we actually are, increasingly doing better in execution in store, which is driving our success. And then obviously, impressions and engagement from consumers. And that's, so far, again, we're doing really well there.
I loved your concept this year, by the way, for the Vayner team, and you made to be roasted. I mean, it's so perfect. It's so obvious. It's so creative. And the way you executed it just was so much fun. So could you talk a little bit about the origin of the concept? We're always looking to get, original concepts in marketing, concepts that will break through. We do concept testing all the time. Talk about that concept.
I remember the brief. The brief in the tweet was like, enjoy the peanuts. And if you think about that's as simple as that. And I think coming out of
by the way, and everyone wonders why agencies are all driving themselves crazy. Talk about having a lot of room in that brief, right?
Yep.
I sorry to jump in, Rafiq, but just a point that I've been thinking a lot about. The brief is really fun because that's a dream, because Rob prefers that. Rob's team prefers that. That means they can do whatever the hell they want. I, on the other hand, like from a day-to-day standpoint, take Super Bowl out, think that a lot of the brands here, again, trying to bring value to this call in a different way, getting briefs that have a ton of teeth in them from a day-to-day marketing standpoint is something that we need to add to our infrastructure, especially with social. As every brand here goes to a model of doing social marketing on a daily basis, because how much brand is being built there, more and more briefs with like very narrow, like consumer segmentations, or like very sharp, tight, very narrow briefs will really help, because I think it helps on relevance. But for Super Bowl, that wide of a brief is like a creative's dream, but sometimes puts you into a swirl.
I want to bring in Dana Marino. Let's bring in Dana Marino of Rakuten into the conversation. And Rafiq, I'll let you welcome her and maybe have a question for Dana, who has been in the Super Bowl now 2 years in a row, correct? So we'll talk about that in a moment. But Rafiq, back to you to bring Dana in with a question.
Yeah, no, so Dana, we've been obviously partnering on the creative side as well. So excited to see you again this year. So tell us, what was your most exciting moment for this week as you prepped for Super Bowl?
Oh my gosh, nice to see you, Rafiq, and of course, both of you. My most exciting moment was coming into this office on Monday and just the elation of everyone in the company, from the people who actually worked on the Super Bowl ad and the campaign, which I think you guys know, we have an in-house brand and creative team. We don't have an agency, to the engineers, to member support, to everyone in the company, just that pride and the press coverage that was just truly stunning for the last couple of weeks on the Rakuten Clueless campaign. People just, you can feel in their bones the excitement and the pride for the company. That was definitely my best moment.
Dana, you had Hannah last year, Hannah Waddingham of Ted Lasso, and you felt really good about the ROI last year. You thought it was really productive. This year, you had Alicia Silverstone of Clueless, brilliant tie-in, by the way. How do you feel? I know it's early, but how do you feel about the impact this year, the ROI this year of your effort?
Yeah, I love all the questions about, is the Super Bowl worth it? Because I do feel passionately about that. And, we do watch, of course, what happens that day. And I will say to your question, yes, app downloads are up, shopping is up, signups are up, search volume is up, all those indicators that we feel great about that one day. But truly, that's not why we do the Super Bowl, to your point about Hannah. What we look at is the year-long results of what happens over the year. And things like our brand awareness number went up 4 points. And every one of you on this call knows how hard it is to move even half a point, right? Rakuten is not a household name in the US quite yet. It is, of course, in Asia. And so we're really working on that brand awareness. So 4 points year on year, that's a big deal. And we had, I talked to Jim last week about this. We had 10% lift in our buyers over the year. And so many metrics like that tell us, yes, the Super Bowl is worth it. Yes, that day we look at those numbers, but it's really the year-long effort that we prove we belong here.
I know you feel one benefit of the Super Bowl is the impact on your culture inside. The pride, the buzz, you just talked about that when you came in on Monday morning. So could you say a bit more about why that is so important for you and how you leverage that?
Yeah, I mean, part of the pride is the in-house team. Part of that is being able to do something like the Super Bowl all on the inside of our own house. There is an incredible feeling that comes with. But, I think all of us can relate to how hard it's been to get employees back to the office. And there, that has been a true struggle of ours, across the board, leaders everywhere of all kinds thinking about that. And I will say, the more we're together, the more prideful we feel, the more we think about it. And then when we do big milestone moments like the Super Bowl and other big campaigns like this, it helps people want to be part of the culture and want to be with their teammates and want to be in the office. And so that's part of, we, with an in-house team, trying to keep these creatives, as you guys all know, motivated and inspired and working on cool stuff. And the Super Bowl, of course, is one of those things. And just getting people together to celebrate like this has been really impactful on our culture.
Barry, over to you. Anything for Dana?
What is the biggest fear when you go into this kind of bet from your standpoint? I see some questions about measurability. There's a lot of people, Tinder, I think Melissa jumped on it as well. Like, again, I come from a lens of, I'm a businessman who happens to be infatuated and enjoys marketing and branding because I think it's the best way to build an actual business. What about the flip side of all this nirvana and us all hanging out and enjoying this combo? Like in an organization that's, a real company, there's going to be CFOs, there's going to be CEOs, there's going to be board members, there's going to be people that are saying, prove it. Like, cool, you measured it throughout the year, but what about the end caps at this, or what about that business? But like, where does the rubber hit the road for you and anybody else in the chat? Because I know that's seems to be the tone and tenor of some of the combo in a different lane.
I mean, it's a great question, and this sort of age-old debate about the Super Bowl and is it worth it? And I think it depends on the company. It depends on where your company is in its life stage. I think it depends on what you need to do within the region. Like in this US region, we need to build awareness and understanding of Rakuten, right? We have a lot of people who have heard our name because they see us on the Golden State Warriors jersey, or they know us, from the Barcelona jersey in Europe or Japan, whatever it is, but they don't know what Rakuten is, right? So I think it depends. I mean, Pepsi has a totally different strategy than we do, right? As relates to culture and the Super Bowl, we need people to become aware and understand how meaningful Rakuten can be. And so you're right, we do look at those metrics, the week before, the day of, the week after, over the year, the next quarter. I mean, we look at the science. I assure you, it's just, we have multiple layers by which we measure success, some of which, of course, is what happens that day on our site and in our app, and what happens over the year as we're trying to build the engagement and build the awareness.
So Dana, stay with us for a minute. We're going to bring in Nicole Parlapiano from Tubi. Hey, Nicole, welcome to the conversation.
Hi.
A couple days after your Super Bowl spot aired, there was in the news that Fox got an offer of over $2 billion for Tubi. So you obviously had a very high ROI, if there's any correlation in that.
Oh,
but I thought
that came out before, I think, the ad.
Oh, did it really?
Yeah,
in
I wish I
anticipation of
could-
the Super Bowl.
I think we'd be at like 4 or 5 now for an offer after Super Bowl, but we'll have to ask Lachlan. But that was before, yeah.
Well, I thought your efforts this year were so amazing. So Dana, what did you think about Tubi this year?
I have to ask you, Nicole, because we had a long debate when we were looking at concepts
Yeah.
about a stunt type object. Please, I'm dying to know sort of how hard was that to get approved, through you, through your team members, through your executives, because that is a very specific strategy. And of course, you had another spot, of course, but the stunt type object is a bold move. So tell us, I would love to hear about
So
that.
I can tell you the backstory, which is very interesting, but Mischief came up with this idea of hacking the interface. And we thought about hacking a generic car ad because
Okay.
people watch the
Mm.
ad so intensely.
Mhm.
And I just didn't, I'm new to this organization. I started in August. I didn't know the kind of room I'm walking into, what the creative energy was going to be. So we presented Rabbit Holes, we talked about it. And it was actually with Lachlan, and he was like, I feel like nobody knows the product and people need to see the product. And I was like, well, we actually have this kind of edgy thing that, and I just kind of soft pitched it. And Fox Sports was in the meeting and they're like, hack the game. Like, you can hack the broadcast. And I was
Amazing.
like, I can
Mhm.
what? And so it's different because, Fox is, hosting the Super Bowl. We can make things like that as an organization happen. And so it was really just luck and evolution and actually having a construct of an idea, not even imagining that they would even let me do that. And then it just kind of free flowing in the conversation, and a big partnership with the, CMO of Fox Sports, Robert Gottlieb, because he was like, we have to make this authentic. How would we do it? Like, how would it look real? And so they really leaned in and helped execute that.
You have all this momentum now, all this buzz, all this attention. Where do you go from here? How do you build on this most amazing momentum? So many people have challenges like that, right?
Yeah, and I just I think everyone else in the room has done this before. This is my first time, and
Mm.
I think I haven't even had a chance to enjoy it because I'm just like, how do I follow on this? Like, what's next? How do we keep that momentum? Not that I'm not proud, and there's a moment to be proud, and my team got me a Super Bowl dupe ring. But I just think, the bar is set, and how do you keep doing it year after year? I think it was my first year. We had very, specific constraints on budget, on timelines. We don't pay for commercial time. You don't know when your spots are going to air. It's kind of like the Wild West at Fox 3 days before. So you have to create a lot of things, and things are going to change last minute, and you have to be flexible. The spots moved, the amount of time we got moved. So I think that I just wonder, like, how do you continue, and
Mhm.
what it feels like your second time? Because your first time, I think that the expectation is like, oh, we're going to do this thing and we hope it's good, but it's not like always comparing to yourself, right? Your own benchmarks, which I think is the challenge going forward, right?
Tide did so much interruptive work a few years ago when they took over the Super Bowl. This kind of reminded me of that kind of impact that you had. Just everyone was talking about it. And when you did the takeover of the screen, our house went nuts. It was all this screaming all over the house because we had a couple TVs on. We had a lot of young kids over, all this screaming. And it was so good. So congrats.
Yeah, but
Well
maybe
done.
lucky in the sense that the game was the Kansas City Chiefs and the Eagles. It was so close. I mean, that spot moved a million times. When they moved me to Q4, I was like, no, this is going to be terrible. And
Scary.
it was like, it actually built to it.
Yeah, Q4 is scary.
Yeah.
Like, everyone's too young for this. But boy, oh boy, the mid 80s to mid 90s was a disaster. Every game was a blowout, and Q3 and 4 was just like death. And, luckily the parity of the NFL now, I think, really helps us as marketers, where most games are still going to be fairly close in third and fourth quarter. But the fourth quarter still, that I remember, was it the Michael B. Jordan Amazon ad with the Chiefs, Tampa game, which got a little bit out of hand towards the end? I remember thinking that was a really strong potential ad that really never caught it. Though if it was in the first quarter, I felt would have had a lot more juice. And so that, talk about timing. And I think, the Tide hack, Jim, and I know Nick worked on that when he was at another agency, there was some really good stuff going on with that, but that's commercial within commercial.
Yeah.
Back to what Nicole's saying, which is the serendipity of just speaking out loud. That's a big learning. For what I just took away from Nicole is too many people here sit, even at this level, sit on ideas and just let them pass, which is one of the amount of really not great thought starters that come out of my mouth in meetings is a lot, but it's because I lack
Todd shaking his head yes there.
it's because I lack the fear. I lack the fear that
Yep.
it's, that's fine. Even sometimes by the time it's out of my mouth, I'm like, I didn't even like that, my darn self. But that might make Sam M, who's on here, say, but yes, but like, we do not have an and lack of fear culture in marketing that we have in other parts of the business universe that I play in. And I think, again, trying to think of themes for everyone to walk away from. If anything, if Nicole, and I know her very well because we spent a lot of time together, if she wasn't who she was and didn't have the ability to do that, then what happened Sunday doesn't happen. I think a lot of people here, even at the level they are today, sometimes in the midst of the thing that I've always struggled with creative agencies is they use subconscious or conscious behaviors towards their clients to impose their creative subjectivity as if they're so much more creative, back to the Todd thing I mentioned. And I think everyone here, even if you were, some of the CMOs here came up the analytics track and have just decided that they're not as creative as like the fancy characters on the other side of their table. And I think that's completely wrong. I think that we, with our creative model over the last 3 years, to Rob, back to his journey, have proven actually good ideas can come from anywhere, including someone who's worked here for 7 days versus been a creative director at 4 fancy shops. That's a big transformation. And I think if you want to leave with something out of this, we need to talk more in these meetings, because our talking may not be the good thing. It just might be the seed of a great thing that somebody else picks up on. And back to everyone being leaders here, we must eliminate fear, eye rolling. I hate the human behavior that makes someone feel inferior in all shapes in life. And we definitely need to get that out of every creative meeting we're in, because nothing kills creativity more than a douchebag creative lead or a douchebag client that makes everyone feel like shit because they put out their subjective thing, and then somebody in there thinks that their subjective thing is more better because of some bullshit award, ad meter, ad week, Cannes Lion. It's all not real. And please don't use not real to not be nice.
Mm-hmm. Andrea Sullivan, the CMO at VaynerMedia, and one of my favorite people. Would you join us now? And I think you're going to close us out with some hot takes. Nicole, congrats. What an amazing, amazing effort. But Andrea, back to you to sort of close us out with a few hot takes.
We got some great folks in the audience that we thought we might bring up and ask them what their hot takes were from the game. So can we bring up Ian Trombetta from the NFL?
Ian, great work. Well done, Ian. Wow.
Busy couple weeks. Great to be here.
Ian, we'd love to hear from you a little bit about, everybody's talking about the halftime show.
Yeah, it was great. Rihanna was fantastic. Obviously, new partner with Apple Music, so there was quite a bit to get onboarded with them. I thought they did a really nice job. A lot to live up to with Pepsi in the last several years. So they did a great job. And obviously Rihanna being pregnant, which we learned, at least I learned very late in the week during rehearsals. That was such a huge moment, for us as well as for her and the audience at home. A couple of things that I just like to touch on, if you don't mind, just listening to the conversation. The Super Bowl, it's actually bigger than I think many people actually know. It's actually bigger than the 113 million people that Nielsen rates. What happens is they're measuring that off of an average household that's watching TV on a normal basis. But if you take the Super Bowl, which we've actually worked on some custom analysis with them, it's well over 200 million that are actually watching the Super Bowl live. And such a powerful moment on social as well. It's the most powerful moment on social of the year, hands down. So whichever way you're looking at it, through linear or through social, and obviously you should all be thinking about it just in terms of the surround sound on the day of, but also the week leading into it. There's so many great moments and hype building up into the Super Bowl, starting with opening night. And I think, Laura, who was on earlier, Jen at the Eagles, they both did a terrific job of leaning into that moment when the teams arrived. So really, when that happens, the hype machine is starting, and nothing really else is really invading the culture other than the Super Bowl conversation and that build up to the actual game itself. So lots of, I think, great momentum heading into next year in Las Vegas. And Gary, you had mentioned the international growth, and that's something I'd love to talk about maybe that at another time, but that is a major focus for us as well. So super exciting and obviously great results for hopefully everyone here.
Thank you, Ian. Congrats. We want to bring up Andrea Zaretsky next. from E-Trade.
Hi, how are you?
Fantastic. Andrew, E-Trade's been on the Super Bowl off and on for
Yep.
15 years. So want to hear this hot take for sure.
Yeah, sure. So, this, first of all, it's great to be here, and I loved the work this year. I thought it was incredible. I think in addition to all the levity, I think emotion was on the field this year. The 2 dog commercials, I think, really captured everyone's hearts. Sometimes we hope it's babies, but dogs, I think, did a really good job. Faith was on the field. I thought that was a new one with the 2 commercials that got a lot of talk. But I agree with you. I think everyone's being a lot more holistic and thinking through their whole strategy to make the most of pregame, day of, and after the game. I'm seeing that from all of the brands, and I think that really helps with the investment and all the conversations you were having about ROI. How do you continue the momentum? I think that's the name of the game.
Jump in here. I also just want to say, I agree. E-Trade Baby, I do think is truly top 10 all time. I think we can all agree with that. I agree. But I just want to thank everybody. I really, hence why I'm jumping off. I have to go to a 5 o'clock. It's a little bit of an important fire, but just knowing how busy everybody is, that all of you continue to show up to these, and I'll leave you with the thing that matters to me the most. You need to hire people for your teams. I think we've groomed some of the most contemporary, best talent in the world. That played out today with Nicole on here. If there's anything I can help you with, you need me to take a selfie with your nephew, whatever you need, just reach out, and I'll let you all continue here, and I'll see you all soon.
See you, Gary. Thank you.
Gary.
As always, Jim, you're the best.